Good morning, guys. I just wanted to touch. I've had a bunch of questions about the Migratory Bird Treaty reform of 1998 and exactly what was going on and what happened. Well, if you go to flywayfederationusa.com, you can actually look at the treaty report from the Migratory Bird Treaty reform. And what's even cooler is you can look at the meeting minutes and you can read everything that was said at this meeting. So I'm going to touch on a few things. I'll have to keep up with my pages because it is 98 pages long and I don't want this to be too long. So I'm going to go through and grab paragraphs out of it. We'll start right here. So, it says now, Senator Cochran and I both serve on the Migratory Bird Conservation Commission. I have been an active participant in hunting organizations like Ducks Unlimited for years to try and increase the assistance in land and everything that is important and proper for migratory bird conservation, improvement, and quality of population of birds. But I think that in this one case, unless Congress follows through and does what the House has done and presents a more level playing field, that we're missing a real opportunity. Thank you for your consideration. Okay, so what this was doing, this was at the very beginning of the meeting, and they are considering this bill, okay, to pass it through. Now, granted, what else is funny about this is whenever you read the report, it says that this was done in it was passed through in a closed door meeting with no roll call votes taken. But yet, this meeting shows everyone that was there. It shows it's for HR 2863. You can see it right here. Thank you for inviting me to speak in support of HR 2863, the Migratory Bird Treaty Reform Act of 1998. Okay, let's scroll down. Now, let's see. Keep in mind under the services current baiting regulations, bait has to be removed from the area in 10 days. They're explaining through all this what the baiting laws are and everything. Let's see. Yeah, right here. Okay, so someone was talking to me the other night and they were like, "Oh man, that was only removing strict liability." Well, if you look on the Migratory Bird Treaty report, the reform, anything to do with this, there was three things that was amended. Okay, and this talks about the difference in specific things that it was going to be handling. Now, whenever I brought this up to a guy the other night, he was like, "Oh man, that's just talking about dove stuff, topsoil and winter wheat." Well, the paragraph right below it talks about waterfowl and agricultural land. But let's read the lines right above it. There are two other aspects of this that I think you should persuade the committee that this is a good bill. It's different from the House bill in these additional respects, and we would encourage you to look at our bill and report it favorably to the Senate. It tries to make the determination as to what is a normal, usual agricultural practice and protect the right, key thing, of landowners to engage in wildlife habitat management activities, as well as normal agricultural practices, without running the risk of being convicted under the terms of these regulations that Wildlife Service has proposed and some new ones that are being considered. So, let's look right here. So the first one is one specific example, and it talks about the dove hunting and topsoil in winter wheat. But let's go down to the next one because that's the important one, and I don't want to waste y'all's time. Y'all can go back and read all this stuff, and I'm really telling y'all, go and read every single word of this, and it will make you understand what happened. One other aspect we have in the law now is incentives for landowners to manage their lands, their privately owned lands, for the purpose of attracting wildlife, for nurturing wildlife. We have the Wildlife Habitat Incentives Program, which I was pleased to author when we wrote it, the 1996 Farm Bill. And that has served to provide inducements to landowners to undertake the management of their lands to attract waterfowl, to attract migratory birds, and to attract other wildlife and sustain it. There are many who are concerned that if they engage in practices that they do attract and make it a habitat that's attractive to wildlife, they're going to be accused of violating these regulations. Okay, so it just got through talking about they were wanting to change what exactly a definition was of a normal agriculture practice, and then they're talking about the incentives programs and conservation programs for wildlife, but mainly migratory birds right there through the Farm Bill of 1996. And then it talks about how the landowners and farmers were scared to really get into these programs because if they were going to do what these people wanted them to do, they were going to get busted for going against the regulations. So let's skip down to okay, yeah. Okay, so I'm sorry I took a second. I had to get down to this one. So it's talking about the bill, and then it says active management of native vegetation occurs throughout the United States, but is most common in California's Central Valley, marshes of the Great Lakes, Mississippi River habitats in Illinois and the surrounding states. In the rice prairies of Texas, the lower Mississippi River Valley, and the low country of South Carolina, moist soil management is the single most important practice used to improve natural habitat for waterfowl and other migratory birds. According to the International Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies, practices such as water level manipulation, water circulation techniques, impounding water, ditches, salinity control, mowing, shredding, disking, rolling, chopping, grazing, burning, trampling, flattening, herbicidal treatment, and wetland associated plant propagation techniques do not create the kind of lure or attractant to waterfowl typically associated with dumping of grain. However, the manipulation of native vegetation by waterfowl biologists, landowners, and hunters has placed waterfowl hunters in jeopardy of violating current regulations. According to Bill Gaines, Director of Government Affairs of California Waterfowl Association, confusion over the meaning and enforcement of these regulations is compromising the willingness of many landowners to employ preferred waterfowl habitat management practices on their lands. Okay, so it just got through talking about flooding, water circulation techniques, impounding water, ditching, salinity control, mowing, shredding, disking. Okay, so there's all the stuff that's in the regulations and the Migratory Bird Treaty, but yet whenever you look at the regulations and the Migratory Bird Treaty now, water level manipulation, water circulation techniques, impounding water, ditching, salinity control, none of that's in there, which I understand, that's fine, but I'm pointing this out to y'all that here is how a lawyer uses things, and puts wording in to benefit them to make their stuff happen. Now, it also talked about moist soil management. What they did was, and we'll get to that here in just a second, what they did was they made it able to use agricultural crops in moist soil management. Okay? Not just millet. Okay? We're talking about corn and other agricultural crops. Now, let's go on down. Okay, one thing I need to point out is the fact that there's been a lot of attacks from Mississippi and a certain group of guys, and I know they all think I'm crazy or that I don't look into it or that I don't know who they are or who they're involved with. But let me read this, and maybe y'all will get the drift of what group it is, and y'all can look them up and see exactly what they are. That way I don't have to call them out. But if you read in this, you can find out who they are. Senator Cochran, right? The state would certify what is the normal farming practice and try to protect people who engage in those practices and keep them from being convicted of violating the law when what they're doing is normal topsowing of wheat. I use that specific example, and there may be others. The other thing is managing your property, your private land, for the purpose of increasing its attractiveness as a wildlife habitat. We're encouraging people to do that. The federal government is providing financial incentives to landowners to achieve that result. And what they're now worried about is that under a strict reading of some of these proposed legislations and existing rules of the Fish and Wildlife Service, those landowners can be charged and fined for enticing habitat if you also enlarge in hunting of those lands. So it really needs the attention of Congress to sort this thing out. The Fish and Wildlife Service is just being simply too aggressive when hunting is involved in areas where practices being undertaken are lawful, even encouraged and rewarded by the federal government. But if you hunt in those areas, then you're liable of being convicted of a crime. Written by the Delta Wildlife Foundation, Stonesville, Mississippi, June 30th, 1998. Key point. Just look them up. So, let's go back to this. So, it's talking right here that if these guys are concerned that if they're hunting on these properties, they're enticing waterfowl and luring waterfowl, that they're gonna get in trouble. Well, yeah, originally you would, because it's not a bona fide agricultural practice, and you're also building this property. Remember, it just said incentive programs. You're building that property with United States taxpayer dollars. So, let's go on down. So, right here, the problems with enforcement on dove baiting has been the lack of uniform understanding hunters as to what constitutes a bona fide agricultural operation or procedure. Okay, then it gets down to right here. Under this provision, no person shall take migratory game birds by baiting, placing feed such as corn, wheat, salt, or other to constitute a lure or enticement. This section, however, does not prohibit taking migratory game birds over grain crops scattered solely as a result of normal agricultural planting or harvesting, or as a result of manipulation of a crop other than feed on the land where grown for wildlife management purposes. Do y'all understand that? What exactly that's saying? So, What they did was, through moist soil management programs, they got it approved to put agricultural crops on them. Okay? Not natural habitats. Agricultural crops on them. And then they get it approved to be able to commercially hunt them and to hunt on these properties. You guys really need to visit flywayfederationusa.com and read all of this. Even whenever you scroll through, you'll get to where the people who were for it and the people who were against it. Matter of fact, what blows my mind is I've been trying to get a hold of the Audubon Society, and I've only spoken to a couple people. I hadn't gotten, I guess, to the right person yet. But in this, the Audubon Society, the oldest migratory bird conservation group in the world, was against the migratory bird treaty reform. So what does that tell you guys? I don't know. Keep listening. I'll keep throwing facts. Later.